Alright. Okay, this works. Okay, so first question should be quite straightforward. So if you came to like my previous session that I went through you guys on like the loops and conditions, right? Usually when I say that the moment you see ranges, immediately you know that you see more than two ranges, it's going to be a if, else, if kind of case, right? So you're just going to do a lot of if, else, if, that kind of thing. Alright, this question is pretty much quite straightforward, except that there's a mini little gotcha that you might fail one or two test case. Okay, so the gotcha over here is actually this part, where they say that if you have two condition that doesn't match both criteria, so meaning for example, right, you have grade 1 systolic, like you might be at like 135, but then you have like 150 diastolic, then that would actually mean that you are going to take the higher category, which in this case is going to be crisis. Okay, so the idea here is just that you have to check, you have to always prioritize the one with the higher category. Now how can you prioritize with the higher category? Okay, so this is how the category work, right? I just kind of like draw it out over here. If we take a look at all the value for the category, we can see that the one that is N is actually the one with the lowest priority, right? So the example I give here is systolic is 125, diastolic is 85. So systolic 125 is here, but diastolic 85 is actually here. So by right, you need to take the higher category, which is category 1. So the suggestion here is you can actually just swap the sequence, right? You can swap the sequence around and just think of it slightly differently, right? Instead of thinking it as NE12C, you can think of it as like C21EN. So you match each of the higher case first. So as long as you match one of the previous case, you don't need to worry about like the later case not matching up to a higher case. Like you don't have to check 2 times. So the way that you can just write this whole chunk of code here is, firstly you want to match one by one. What you can do is you can either categorize all these things with like some comments just to make your life a bit easier, so you know which part of the code you're doing what, right? Then after you can just do the case. Okay, so firstly I would say that if systolic is more than 180, or I mean this question is quite nice to you lah, they literally tell you all here. So or diastolic is more than 120, then after I'm just gonna return C. So very straightforward for this one. Now then after that you can either do it with else if, or you can just do it with another if. Doesn't matter here. And why it doesn't matter here? Because you already returned from the previous statement, so you don't really need to do some sort of else if. But if you do want to, you can, and we will just do that. Systolic is more than or equal to 140, and systolic is less than or equal to 180. Okay, so it's either this one or diastolic is more than or equal to 90, and diastolic is less than or equal to 120. Okay, I can do this. Actually what? Yeah, let's not do the else if. It's so messy. Okay, so I can do it this way, right? And then I can just say return 2. Right? But actually this one is a bit loso. There's a way to simplify this. Anyone did a simpler condition? Yes, Chloe.
You don't need to do the less than equals 180. Yeah, because it's already taught by the on-top one.
Yes. So the previous condition already handled for you that it's impossible to be more than 180 already. So instead of being like so loso, you can just say if systolic is more than or equal to 140, or diastolic is more than or equal to 90. You can just say this. And this serves the exact same purpose as what on top shows, just because your previous if statement has already handled that. So following by that same logic, right, we can handle all the rest the same way. So this one should be 130 and 80. Yeah, 130 and 80. 130, 80. And then this returns 1. And then next one is 140, 120 and less than 120 and less than yeah, less than 80, right? Else I can just return whatever the last one is, which is neutral. Right, I think this one is elevated, right? So the code will just look like this. Yes, what's up?
Well, if you use the way you just now before that, the low flow method, would it like penalize?
Oh no, you don't get penalized at all. So in fact, if you find that it's difficult for you to visualize that, I'd rather you do this, because this way you are very easy to check one-to-one with the question. Right, I can check one-to-one with the question over here. I can say this is 130, this is 139, and then the other one is 120, 129. Yeah, 120, 129, and then this one is diastolic less than 80. This is an N, and then this one is 80, 89. So yes, you can do this. This is perfectly fine. Okay? Choose whichever you like. Okay, so that is for question 1. Should be very straightforward.